You're listening to Healthcare Now Radio. Stand by for This Just In, the latest in healthcare innovation and technology trends with your HIT advisor, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these half-hour segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. Before we dive into my special guest today, I want to take a moment to let everyone know that we'll be broadcasting the This Just In radio show again live from the HIMSS annual conference next March in Las Vegas. Many more details to come, but I hope everyone is planning on attending. We'll have another great slate of CEO, CIO, leading care providers, industry thought leaders, and certainly policymakers joining the show. But for this episode, my 110th episode, we have a special guest, Lili Gil Valletta, a CEO and co-founder of CIEN Plus. Welcome to the show, Lili.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on air, and we were connected by a great guy, a mutual friend, Olivier Oulier, that you met through the World Economic Forum. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are both members of that great community, and we're both part of an impact lab where we brought some new thinking, new technologies that hopefully can make the world a better place. So it was a great forum.
Excellent. And where was that forum? I know you guys do a lot of work around the world, but this one was where exactly?
Well, this Impact Forum was actually in New York City. There were 14 people from all over the country that were selected by the World Economic Forum, all of us young global leaders that are working on different projects, initiatives, or ways to use technology to make the world a better place, have impact, maybe help the world of healthcare or social injustice, and that's what brought us together. It was a great opportunity, a great forum with amazing people that now have challenged me to think in bigger and better ways.
That's excellent. No, I love the work, and I love a lot of the things that come out of the Economic Forum. So fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about you. Where were you born, raised, college, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I have an exciting story. I'm originally from Colombia, and I came to the U.S. at the age of 17 with a student visa, a suitcase, a pocket translator, and I'm dating myself with that one, without speaking a word of English. At the age of 17 by myself. I was actually in the great state of Texas to talk about a first American experience where I was first enrolled in an English as a second language program in a small private Christian school. I guess that's where my parents felt safe that this girl could go. And that's where I started, learning and wanted to always be in the world of business. So I was a finance major. The school that I went to is called Southwestern Adventist University. And after that, I ended up moving to Florida with my first official job being in an exciting place in Celebration, which is where the town right next to the parks in Walt Disney. And I guess that's where my love for healthcare started, because I was part of that big project of building Celebration Health, which was done in partnership with Florida Hospital. And I was part of that initiative. And I was in awe to see how patient experience can be designed at the time. I mean, this is in the 90s, and it was already wireless and things like that, so ahead of its time. That just made me fall in love with what it means to touch people at that critical moment when they need a lot of help and a lot of information. So that was my first real job, and after that, I ended up at J&J and Johnson & Johnson in New Brunswick. I moved to New Jersey from sunny Florida, and the rest is history. I guess I won't steal the thunder from the rest of our interview, but that's kind of how it all started.
That's awesome. Now, you really, truly have the American dream, and I don't come across that a lot. I mean, there's different components and pieces that people have, but you really did, you came from Colombia with basically a suitcase and a pocket translator and just went at it. And that's just, congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you, thank you. And let me underscore that, because it's just it validates once again how incredible this country is when you work really hard, when you persevere, when you give it your all and put the work into whatever you want to accomplish. It is doable, and I think sometimes we take it for granted. So I'm so blessed to be able to be here and hopefully contribute and bring new thinking and new solutions so that we can continue to thrive as a country and bring solutions not just to our own, but the rest of the world. So definitely, I believe strongly that the American dream is real as it has ever been. And I hope we just keep that in mind and in perspective, because it's a great place to be.
I agree completely. I'm dating myself a little bit, but my grandmother came over as an immigrant and built her entire life from scratch, from farming and then been into nursing and being an entrepreneur and a business lady, really from the bootstraps. But then even that, but also even today, we're looking at, my wife and I take care of an orphanage over in Cambodia, and we sponsor some children, and one of those children is about to turn 18. You can't adopt from Cambodia because of different laws that exist. But when they turn 18, we're going to bring our child over here, and we expect to, hopefully, and let him live the American dream of working very hard. You come on to a show that I think all my guests have kind of worked from scratch. Not all the American story in that respect from like your background, but all are, for the most part, all CEOs grinding it out on a daily basis, 80-hour, 100-hour weeks, doing whatever it takes to be successful. And hopefully my foster son will be able to have that same experience here in America. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and I think back to the point you just made, entrepreneurship sometimes gets celebritized, right? We're in the era of
right.
Shark Tank and Mark Zuckerberg, and you want to be the next Snapchat or something like that. But yes, those are all incredible stories, but it takes a lot of work, and we often celebrate the end of the journey and forget that there is a journey. So thank you so much for allowing us to share more about the real, side of that journey, because at the end of the day, and I couldn't be doing what I do today if I wasn't passionate about it. It's much bigger than building a multi-million-dollar empire and the ambition of that, but its impact, because there's no amount of money that is going to give you the fulfillment of satisfaction and joy. But when you are achieving what you feel is your purpose and mission, it allows you to pull the all-nighters more than you should, maybe, to keep it going, for sure. So yeah, great perspective, and I'm so glad you're giving us a forum here to share a little bit more.
Sure. So tell us about your background as a former corporate executive and entrepreneur, and then now turned entrepreneur. So tell us about that.
Yes. So I was a Johnson & Johnson for 10 years, and it was an incredible place to be. I really give all the credit to my professional kind of acumen and structural ways of working and process-driven ways to the schooling that J&J gave me. So at J&J, I was part of a leadership development program that very quickly prepared me to become an executive at a really young age. When I left J&J, I was director of global marketing services in the pharmaceutical sector, which was a big job, and I had a pulse on the pipeline of, healthcare solutions that we had in the horizon at the time, and some of the challenges and exciting opportunities in the industry at the time. And being the immigrant from Colombia and the Latina, right, because I adopted that identity when I came to the U.S., I realized that there was an opportunity to better understand growth markets. So here we are, many times in the pharma sector, looking out at the next 10 or 12 or 15 years when you're hoping to launch this next blockbuster solution. But in those 10 or 15 years, the market is like changing right before our eyes. The demographic composition of the patients we're looking to serve. And I got curious. I started asking the question. I was like, wait, are we looking at the unique unmet needs of diverse patients and those that are disproportionately affected by the diseases that we're trying to solve? And it wasn't an intentional miss. It was just that the question hadn't been asked. So at my corporate job at the time, I took it upon myself to create a task force to develop the business case and put in dollars and cents and in numbers how big this opportunity was and what it meant to be inclusive of all patients as we're thinking about go-to-market strategy. So inside J&J, I call myself an intrapreneur because to create things that are new, to bring to life a vision, you don't have to just kind of quit your job and go off and do the entrepreneurship thing. It starts today in whatever you're at with the ability to create. We all have that capability. So that's what I did. I created a Hispanic employee resource group that to this day has thousands of members, and it's been in existence for 16 years. I was just at J&J for the anniversary last month. But that is what inspired me to realize that if J&J was one company that was intrigued, curious, and had the need to better understand growth markets and prove kind of like future-proof plans, that there must be a need also by other leaders, especially in the healthcare sector, that need to understand this new imminent reality of shifting demographics and a fast approaching majority minority nation. So that was my muse to leave my job, which was absolutely crazy. People thought I was insane leaving such an incredible company. Right. In 2008, when the financial world is collapsing and everyone is hanging on to their jobs, I was like leaving at that time because I wanted to build a company I wish I could have found to hire as a corporate executive that could help me crack the code in understanding growth markets and turn diversity into a competitive advantage for innovation, growth, and ultimately serve the needs of all people and all patients that we want to touch. So that's kind of like the backstory that took me from corporate life into opening and running my own business today. So
you mentioned, and that's fascinating. I know it leads you right into what you're doing now, which is just terrific. So you mentioned the word, cultural and the term cultural intelligence. So tell us about that, and then also tell us why it's so important.
Yeah. So as I was doing some of this work back in my corporate life, crunching the numbers, kind of creating financial models to see what the ROI was of these important, fast-growing segments, I realized, wait a second, we all talk about, as leaders, needing to, obviously you need to have IQ and EQ, right, to be able to make proper decisions and be a complete leader, et cetera. But in crunching those numbers, it just kind of hit me with the facts, the reality of understanding the dimension and the value that culture brings into business. And I just said, oh my gosh, this is like acquiring cultural intelligence, which is now I've given it a definition, which I describe it as the ability to be aware of, understand, and apply cultural competence into everyday decisions. And that's exactly what it is, because many of us are aware of the fact that there are shifting demographics and, that there's things that are different across segments maybe, but that doesn't deliver value, innovation, growth, or ROI unless you take it to the path of, okay, now let me understand it, which is where kind of getting the numbers and doing the work comes into play. Yeah. And now that I have the numbers, let me apply it. That is where the magic happens. So that's what I've now defined as cultural intelligence, which I strongly believe that any leader, and this is not an American thing, this is a global marketplace thing, any leader that wants to successfully achieve its full potential for growth and innovation and ROI ultimately has to include cultural intelligence, because we're an interconnected, diverse marketplace, period. And it's not one size fits all. We know that. So gotta go after understanding, applying to get the value on the other end.
Yeah, and when I came across this, when Olivier sent it along, I was fascinated. And we are a global society. No matter what someone says or thinks, it doesn't matter. We are a global society, and you have to begin to think like this. You have to deploy these types of strategies and tactics to succeed and achieve your own goals. So,
correct.
Tell us, I guess, because you also, during some of the materials that I was reading, you mentioned this term majority minority, and at a surface level, I understand it, but dive into it, because I think we as a culture, I want to be educated more, and I certainly want my audience to understand more, because this is significant, and diving into this will certainly help all of us. So tell us about that term as you define it.
Yeah. So it's funny how we use terms in whether it is in the mainstream media or in like economic or census reports that I know they're going to have to evolve because they're in a way a contradiction. So the term minority, today really is kind of like a general term that labels the grouping of everyone that is non-white, African American, Hispanic, Asian, all other. Now you have mixed race, etc. So we're used to speaking of them as minority, which ironically the term makes it small because it sounds like it's minor, like it's a niche. But when you crunch the numbers and when you look at census projections for the overall population of America in general, today we're about at a 60-40, which means 40% of Americans are non-Hispanic white, which means they're diverse. But if you look at what that projection is by the year 2020, 2030, 2040, that portion of the population is the one that is driving all of the growth in population in America, which means that the non-diverse portion is actually shrinking. And there is this pivotal point, depending on which report you're reading. Some reports put it at 2035, which, by the way, that's not that far out if you think about it.
Right.
By the year 2035, we will hit the majority minority status, which means more than 50% of the American population will be made up of diverse segments. So that's what it means when I say that we're a fast approaching majority minority. I'm confident that the terms are going to have to evolve with the times because it makes no sense. Some people call it the general market today, the segment that is non-diverse. But if you think about it, in cities like LA or New York, for that matter, the general market is already diverse. So the term is flawed by definition. So there is not just the understanding of the numbers. For everyone that is listening, by the way, if I'm confusing you, here's the easy number to remember. 100% of population growth in America is driven by diverse segments, period. Which means, as any economist or any financial expert will tell you, you want to bet on growth. You want to anticipate growth trends. You want to future-proof your decisions so that you are ahead of what is coming or needed.
Right. And
that means the place to bet on and better understand and invest in are growth markets, which are those diverse segments that are driving 100% of the growth. So that's kind of how it's a big reality. It's a very simple chart, by the way, that anyone can find if you Google it, because it's census data, but often is left out of boardrooms or meetings where decisions are being made, and we keep putting most of our resources in a shrinking market. So that's what I mean by a fast approaching majority minority. So
how can pharma, healthcare, marketing evolve to meet these realities of a majority minority market?
I think ironically, pharma, in the way it's evolving, it is already ready or prime to embrace what it means to be relevant for a majority minority. They just don't know it yet. Here's why. Everyone these days is obsessed with patient-centric models, patient-centric experience, patient-centered solutions. There's personalized medicine on the clinical side. So if we have already agreed as an industry that personalization is what it's needed for us to get better solutions and therefore better outcomes, it calls for the need for us to understand the person at the center in better, deeper, and more relevant ways. So if I am designing a patient-centric blank, whatever that is, whether you're a payer or a provider or a healthcare pharma company, if the patient makeup looks the way I was just describing, highly diverse,
Yep.
driven by African American Hispanics that unfortunately are disproportionately affected by chronic disease as well, you cannot help it but to get to the center of that patient's unique culture, lifestyle, food choices, work choices, access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the industry already philosophically is going into this path of personalization, but now the leap that it needs to take is really getting deep into who is that person at the center that I'm going to be serving today, 5 years, 10 years from now, so that you can be relevant in the way those solutions, experiences, or interventions are designed, so that we're not generalizing for the portion that is actually shrinking and maybe will not be the majority of your market when you launch, let's say, for a future compound. So they're there philosophically. Now we just need to do the work and dive deeper into understanding the needs and insights behind each of those segments.
Sure. So why aren't more companies activating cultural intelligence type strategies in their plans and their business? Is it just a lack of knowledge, wisdom? What is it?
Mm-hmm. My goodness, I wish I had the magic answer to that question. To this day, I started doing this work inside J&J as my almost like the cultural intelligence incubator, right? And it was done in 2008. Fast forward, and as recent as this week, I was in a room with executives of a top 5 pharma company with a group that did not realize that by the year 2035, we're going to be a majority minority.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is awareness.
Yep.
A lot of it is peeling the onion of the numbers, going one layer deeper from incidence rates or scripts or diagnosis numbers to understanding, well, who is it that is underneath that big number, and having the big aha moment and realization that it will be impossible. And I hate to bring it back to dollars and cents, but these are publicly traded companies that at the end of the day make investment decisions based on return on investment. And they have fiduciary, responsibilities. So how can you meet your numbers without realizing that California today is 63% diverse?
Wow.
It's impossible for you to hit your numbers.
Yes.
Now, I think it's, again, a matter of shifting the narrative and retelling the story under the context of growth and demographic concentration and patient, incidence and specific, diagnosis at the key markets that will have the veil come off from a lot of these executives. I would like to assume that it is an innocent miss. I don't think it's a deliberate discrimination of any sort.
Yeah, I agree.
But it is just challenging the way we're looking at our market plans. By the way, this also applies to agencies, health agencies or providers, because you have to be ready to embrace and serve the needs of current and future patients. Otherwise, cost of healthcare is not going to get any better, or outcomes are not going to get any better. And this notion of value-based, or medicine or performance-based reimbursement is actually going to get worse unless we acknowledge who are the patients and what are their unique needs. So it's going to take some time, but I'm excited that at least I get to do some of this work, a little bit evangelistic in nature, going from company to company, showing them in numbers a new framework of reference as they're thinking about their business and decisions.
Yeah, and we're actually almost at time, and I want to get to one last question, but I will make the commitment to you. I'm going to help you on the awareness because I know our industry deserves it. We need it, certainly in healthcare. And we even talked about, off air, we talked about some of the social integrations that we could do as well, because this is relevant far outside of just what we're doing in the business, in the healthcare side, entrepreneurial side. We need this in some of our societal conversations and integrations that we're doing, and we also desperately need across the country. So certainly I'm going to help you with the awareness, and also want to have you back on air to cover more ground. But my final question, and again, I'll have you back on air here early next year, I think. But and I ask this of all my guests. It's always a great response, and it's actually become its own segment in itself. But what is your favorite place to get or be inspired, Lili?
It's always when I'm back home in Colombia. I guess this is what happens. You take for granted the beauty that surrounds you in nature. We have the Andes that go right through the country, and these mountains are incredibly big and beautiful and green and lush. And it wasn't until I guess I became older and wiser that I realized how grand and beautiful they are. And every time I go back and I look at them, I feel so teeny tiny, but also so inspired to be part of a greater universe. And that it just puts in perspective everything. It grounds me because it brings me back home to kind of like where I am from, and I'll never forget where I come from, and no matter where I go. But it also puts in perspective how we are part of a greater universe, and we should live life through that lens.
Amen.
So for anyone that hasn't gone to Colombia yet, I encourage you to go and see those big giant mountains, because it will make you feel really small, but in a weird way, really big too.
Understand. Thank you very much, Lili. Great to have you on the show today, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule. I know it is, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening and joining us today. And please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. In addition, all of my content will be posted on my website at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a terrific week.